Hi, am I audible? Hello, am I audible? I guess you are not audible. Can you? Okay, good. Um, let's see. I think others should join in some time. Till then, I'll just start today's tutorial. So, we can keep it interactive. You can ask me any doubts you have in between. Okay, and so today's tutorial is about the ninth week of lectures of animal physiology. And I'm Geetika Agarwal. I'm a PhD scholar at Center for Ecological Sciences, ISC Bangalore. So, in this week, we majorly talked about vision as a sense and eye as a sensory organ. And we looked at the anatomy of eye, what are the different parts that make up our eyes, what is the structure of the retina, how how is the lens formed, how does it function, what are the different types of blindnesses, and how is an image formed on the retina, and what is the mechanism of photoreception in the rods and the cones in our eyes. Okay, so starting off with the anatomy of an eye. So, can you label this eye for me? Can you uh, tell me what are these different parts, and I will uh, point the pointer, and can you identify what are these different parts of the eye? Actually, one second, give me a second. Okay, मेरा वो कहाँ है? Where is my case? Hello, yes. So, can you label this diagram of an eye for me? So, what is this in the this layer in the front of the eye? You can actually type it out in the chat box because I am unable to hear you. Yeah, so this is the cornea, and then what is this in the middle from where the light would pass? The lens. Correct. What is this dark red layer here? Or okay, what is this layer that forms the behind of the eye in the yellow? So can you guess this layer which forms the back of the eye? No idea. Okay. And what is this that controls the aperture here? What is this? Any idea? Okay, so basically when we start focus, okay. So when we start labeling an eye, basically that dark layer in red, it's basically the vascular layer, also called the choroid, which is full of blood vessels, arteries, and veins that supply a lot of blood to the eyeball. Then here is the ciliary body and the iris here in the pink, which basically is the colored part of the eye that you see, and that is what controls the area of the pupil, how much light will enter your lens. Then this is the layer which is cornea that you guessed. Then here is the sclera, which is basically composed of collagen, and it gives the structure to the eyeball. And the lens is here, and the layers at the back are basically the retina, which is obviously the back layer of the eye, where the image is actually formed. And this is the optic nerve, which carries the signal from the photoreceptors of the retina to the visual cortex of the brain. Okay. And about the cornea, if you compare it to a camera, it basically acts like the aperture which lets in the eye, uh, and iris basically controls the amount of light that falls on the lens. And cornea, it is avascular and it is transparent. Avascular means that it does not receive any sort of a blood supply, and it is transparent because only then light will be able to pass through the cornea and reach the lens. And lens itself, it focuses that light which it receives onto the retina to form an image on the retina, which is then uh, you know the signals of which are sent to the visual cortex, and it is then recognized by us as something that we have seen already or something that we are not aware of. Okay, so these are a few this is the basic anatomy of the eye. And moving on to the different sections in which the eye can be divided, it's basically divided into an anterior section and a posterior section, depending on the lens. So the section that is in front of the lens, basically between the cornea and the lens, is called the anterior section, and the area which is between the lens and the retina is called the posterior section. And the anterior chamber is filled with something called the aqueous humor, and the posterior chamber is filled with something called the vitreous humor. And the vitreous humor is more jelly like, and the aqueous humor is more watery in consistency. So these are the different sections of the eye, and this is important to remember that what are the different fluids called which fill the anterior chamber and the posterior chamber. Okay, so moving on to what is lens and how is the lens formed. So basically, to know what a lens is, it looks something like this. As we saw earlier, here is the lens. So we see that it's like a clear, transparent structure. But when we begin as an embryo in our mother's womb, the lens is not transparent. It's actually opaque, and it's a curved structure. It is filled up with cells all throughout. Okay, and all of these cells look like regular animal cells. They have all of their organelles with them, and but this lens then undergoes a series of changes which actually convert it into this final lens that we see in our eyes as we grow up, which is transparent and which lets the light go through. So from this opaque lens, how it becomes a transparent lens. So during this development, there are two enzymes, or there are two types of proteins that get that reach a peak, that are expressed in high quantities. So can you guys guess what are these two different types of protein molecules which are expressed in a large amount during the lens development? If you would have seen this week's lecture, you would know what these different types of proteins are that get expressed during lens development. So are you guys aware of this? Anybody would like to take a guess? What are these different types of no? So okay, so basically during the lens development, what happens is there are these two proteins. One of them is the gene expression of alpha crystalline proteins. So the one on the left is alpha crystalline, and the production of this protein, it peaks, or there is a lot of production of alpha crystalline. And after that, there is a sharp rise in the enzyme which is called 15-LOX lipoxygenase. So, after alpha crystalline has been produced in large quantities, then there is a sudden peak in the production of 15 LOX lipoxygenase. And as the name suggests, lipoxygenase is an enzyme that oxidizes lipids. So, what happens after this enzyme gets expressed in huge quantities is that it oxidizes the lipid bilayer that binds every single cell that is present in the lens. And therefore, these perforations that I've marked here in black, these get formed on the cell membrane. And the extracellular fluid, which was separated from the intracellular or the external environment, the cell gets exposed to the external environment, and the extracellular fluid rushes into the cell. What happens after this is that all of the enzymes that are present in the extracellular fluid, they get inside the cell and they destroy all of the organelles inside the cell. And later on, the inside of the cell, when it's been destroyed and the organs have been damaged, then this protein, which is called alpha crystallin, this enters the cell and it fills up the cell. And now the cell membrane, now since this enzyme, which was 15 lox lipoxygenase, it is expressed only for a short amount of time. And in that short period, it perforates the cell membrane and it allows the extracellular fluid to get in and destroy the organelles. But then eventually the cell membrane rebuilds itself. But now all the organelles have been destroyed and they cannot be rebuilt. So what happens is all the cells, they get filled up with this protein which is called alpha crystallin, and it's a transparent protein. So all of the cells in the lens are then filled up with alpha crystallin, and they're just bound by a cell membrane. So this is what makes the lens transparent. Is this clear to everybody, or is there any doubt in any of these steps? Then I can repeat it for you guys. Is the process of how a lens develops in human beings clear to everybody, or should I repeat it? Okay, so does everybody actually understand how the lens is getting developed, or how it becomes transparent from opaque? Okay, I will move on. If you have any doubt about this, you can ask me. So, but to just summarize again, basically, you have a lens. It is full of cells, and all of these are normal cells with all of their organelles, and the lens is opaque. Then what happens is there's a sudden increase in the expression of alpha crystalline protein, and then in the expression of the enzyme 15 lox lipoxygenase. This enzyme, it destroys the cell membranes of all of these cells, and the extracellular fluid enters into the cell and destroys the organelles, and the cell gets filled up with alpha crystalline protein, and that is how the lenses become transparent, because this protein is transparent and it is soluble in water. Okay. Okay. Moving on to the next thing, which is the retina. Now that we have looked at the lens and how the light can actually go through the lens, coming to the retina, which is the layer in which the image is actually formed. So, a retina can be thought of as being something similar to a film in the camera. So, in a camera, when you're actually clicking pictures, the images are formed on the film. So, that is similar to what happens in our eye. The images are formed on the retina, and these image signals are then sent from the optic nerve to the visual cortex of the brain. Okay, it is also called the neural tunic. So this term is given to the retina. It's also called the neural tunic because of all the layers that it has, like a women's skirt. And it comprises of photoreceptor cells, the rods and the cones. And the layer of photoreceptor cells, it actually sits on a layer which is called retinal pigmented epithelial layer. So there is a RPE layer, retinal pigmented epithelium, and then there is the photoreceptor layer on top of that. And this RPE layer, it provides support and nutrition to the photoreceptor cells, and it also prevents the photo damage of these cells. Apart from these two layers, there are also other neuronal layers in the retina, which convey the signals eventually to the optic nerve. So this is how these different layers of the retina look like. So as I said, there is this RPE layer, or the pigmented epithelial layer of the retina, on which these photoreceptor layer sits, on which there are rods and cones. And then there are these other layers, including bipolar cells, ganglion cells. There are also amacrine cells and horizontal neurons in these layers itself. And these are the different types of layers that are present in the retina. And from the rods and cones, which actually are photosensitive, they convert the light signal into these electrical impulses, which are then transmitted via these different neuronal layers, and they are then sent to the visual cortex of the brain. Okay, so coming to the rods and cones, which are the photoreceptor cells. So can you guys tell me how are the rods and cones different? What is the difference between these two cells apart from their shape?
Ma'am,
Anyone?
disc shape is parallel.
What is parallel?
Disc, I mean rod, in a rod.
So you're saying that these optical discs in the rod cell are parallel to each other.
Yeah,
In the cone also, they are more or
yeah,
less.
but there is no uniformity in cone.
Yeah, that is true. There is no uniformity in cone. But what I'm asking you is a much broader question. What is the function of rod and what is the function of cone? How are these two different functionally?
Ma'am, synaptic terminal.
No, what is the difference in the function of rods and cones? How are they different? What is the different functions that they play? Not just in how they are looking, but what is the function that they have? Rods and cones. Have you heard about them before? Nobody has heard about rods and cones. Like, do you not know what is the basic difference of these two cells? Okay, no worries. So basically, one basic difference between rods and cones is that rods are just sensitive to the presence of light. So they, if a person does not have cones or if the cones are not functioning properly, then that person will only be able to form a black and white image, because the rods are only sensitive to the intensity of light, but they don't know, they're not specific to a certain wavelength or to different colors of light. So they cannot identify colors. So if somebody has only functional rods but no functional cones, they can only see a black and white image. These cones are the ones that are actually specific to different wavelengths, like red, green, blue wavelengths of light. And they are the ones that provide color to the images that we see. They are the ones that are sensitive to the colors that we are seeing. So rods are black and white receptors. They can only sense the intensity of the light. And the cones, they're specific to certain different wavelengths. And that is why humans have three different types of cones: red, green, and blue. Other organisms like birds and fishes, they're also sensitive to UV radiation. So they can also see UV rays in addition to red, green, and blue. So this is one basic difference between rods and cones, that rods can only help you see a black and white image, and cones are the ones that actually are sensitive to different wavelengths of different colors. And rods have the pigment which is called rhodopsin, and cones have the pigment which is called ionopsin. Okay. So moving on from this, so these are the different layers of retina as I showed before. Basically, the pigment epithelium, rods and cones, horizontal cells, bipolar cells, amacrine cells, ganglion cells, and then you reach the final inner limiting membrane on which the image is actually formed. Okay, and this spot here where all of the axon terminals from the ganglion cells, they come and they form this optic nerve. All of them, they form a bunch, and then that goes away as the optic nerve. And this point here where all of the ganglions from throughout the retina, all of the axons come together, that is called the blind spot. That is a spot where no image is formed. There is no uh, rod or cone present at that point. So that is called the blind spot in the human eye. Okay. And now coming to how an image is actually processed. So we're going to take an example of a rod cell. Cones also work more or less similarly in this fashion. But we are gonna take an example of a rod cell and see how actually an image is formed. So unlike other cells of the body that are present at, so what is the membrane potential of a resting cell of other, other cells of the body? Here you can see that I've marked that the rod cell has a resting membrane potential of minus 40 millivolts. So can you tell me what is the resting membrane potential of other cells of the human body? Say other
Uh,
neuron cells.
minus minus 70.
Yeah, so the other cells are at about minus 70 or minus 80 millivolts in general. So what happens about in the case of rods is that they are at a resting membrane potential of minus 40 millivolts. Okay. So when it is dark, when there is no signal being received by the rods, the cell is at a voltage of minus 40 millivolts. But when a light shines on the cell, then the membrane potential drops to minus 80 millivolts. So this is somewhat counterintuitive because what we see in all the other sense organs like mechanoreceptors of the ear or like the olfactory receptors in the nose or the gustatory receptors in the tongue, all of these, they sit at a resting membrane potential of minus 80 millivolt, and when they receive a signal is when they fire an action potential, and that is when their voltage goes towards the positive end, right? That is when their voltage becomes more than minus 80, it goes towards the positive end. But for the rods, it is opposite. And when they are resting, their membrane potential is minus 40 millivolts, which means that they are constantly sending out a current towards the visual cortex of the brain. So they are constantly signaling the visual cortex, even when it is dark. When they're receiving no signal, that is when they're constantly signaling, and they have a membrane potential of minus 40 millivolt. But when the light is actually shines on the cell, that is when the membrane potential drops to minus 80, and that is when they're not sending out a signal. So all of the rods that are receiving a light signal, they turn off, and the rest of them, which are in the dark, they are the ones that are on. So the signal, so it is opposite to the other sense organs, and there is a constant current which is flowing when it is dark, and when it is right, they stop signaling. So the signaling in the case of eye is opposite to how it happens in all of the other sensory organs. And by certain rods switching off is how the image is formed in our brain. So you imagine a background which is entirely dark, and when the image is formed, or say imagine a background which is entirely light because all of these lights are blinking because all of these are on. Okay, imagine there is a board with a lot of these bulbs and all of them are on. Okay, so you cannot make an image out of that because all of these bulbs are on, so everything is white to you. But when some of these bulbs they switch off is when you will be able to make out a pattern. Say they switch off in a circular manner, you'll be able to make out that okay, it's showing me a circle shape. So this is how the image is formed in the eye. Is that clear to everybody? When it is dark is when they are sending out a constant signal, but when it is light, they turn off, and the image formation is then happens in the opposite manner.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So moving on from here, now that we know how the image is formed, now we'll see how this is happening. How is the constant dark current going on, and how does it switch off when there is light? So on these discs, I have marked on these discs present here in the rod cell. These dots in the red are actually the rhodopsin pigment, the photosensitive pigment present in the rods. So this is how it's present in all of these discs. I've just marked it on one, but it's present in all of these discs here. So
Ma'am,
this
what does it mean about photosensitivity? What is the meaning of photosensitive?
photosensitive means something which is sensitive to light. Photo here means photon. You know that the light is made up of photons. And when something is
Mhm.
photosensitive, it means that it is sensitive to light.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. So talking about rhodopsin, which is the pigment present in the rod cells, as I said in the previous image. So like this, on every disc, you see the rhodopsin pigment is present. Okay, and it is made up of two parts. One is opsin, and one is retinile. The retinile is always present in a cis configuration. So if you would have studied uh, chemistry in your high school, you would know that there is in organic molecules is always a cis and a trans configuration. So here in the eye, The rhodopsin is made up of opsin and retinal, and the retinal in general is, or in the normal state, is in a cis configuration. Okay, so when it is dark, so when there is no signal happening to the eye, or say when you have shut your eyes, when it is dark outside, so what happens at that point is that the photoreceptors, as I said, they are always sending a constant dark current, and the voltage stays at minus 40. So for the voltage to stay at minus 40, you would be aware from the previous lectures that the sodium channels on the cell membrane should be open, because for a minus 40 millivolt voltage, that means that there is a constant flow of positive ions into the cell. Okay, because from minus 80 to minus 40, it means that the cell is at a more positive membrane potential as compared to minus 80 millivolts. So for this, so there is a constant flow of sodium ions into the cell, and for that, the sodium channels, they stay open in the cell membrane when it is dark. Now, for the sodium ions to stay open constantly, there is this molecule called the cyclic GMP. GMP stands for guanosine monophosphate. So there is this molecule called cyclic GMP which stays attached to these channels and it keeps them open. So you would all be aware of the ligand binding channels, right? We studied about these in the previous lectures. So these ligand binding channels, they basically open up when a ligand is bound to the channel. So that is what is happening here. So when it is dark, the CGMP is constantly bound to the channel and the sodium channels are always open. And there is a constant current of minus 40 millivolts. But when the light falls onto these rod cells, that is when a certain series of events happen. So what happens then is that when light falls onto the photoreceptors, these sodium channels, they close and the voltage of the cell drops down to minus 80 millivolt, and there is no signal going on. So like I said, when it is dark, every cell is sending out a signal. So all of the bulbs are switched on when it is dark. But when it is light, that is when some bulbs, they switch off, and that is how you see the image. So when the light falls on the receptors, some of the sodium channels, they start closing up, and the voltage drops to minus 80 millivolts, and the signal transmission from these particular cells is stopped, from these particular rod cells. So what happens is when a light falls on the cell, the rhodopsin molecule, that gets broken up into opsin and retinal. So since rhodopsin is made up of both things, opsin and retinal, when light falls on the molecule rhodopsin, it breaks up again into opsin and retinal. And this retinal converts into the trans configuration. Okay. And the opsin here, opsin goes and it activates a neighboring protein which is called transducin. Okay. So opsin, it activates transducin. Transducin in turn activates a protein which is called phosphodiesterase enzyme. And phosphodiesterase now goes and it dissociates the cyclic GMP from the sodium channel. And this leads to the closing of these ligand binded channels. So these sodium channels, they close up, and that is how the signal transmission is stopped. So this is called the bleaching cycle of rhodopsin. And at the end of this cycle, the retinal, it regains its cis configuration. So it had been converted into trans and could no longer be attached to opsin to form rhodopsin. So retinal eventually regains its cis configuration and it attaches to opsin, forming rhodopsin again. So this is how the dark and the light phases of these rods function. So to summarize, I will tell you once more what is happening in the bleaching of rhodopsin. So when it is dark, as I said, when it is dark, there is a constant signal transmission. There is a constant current which is called the dark current. So the sodium channels are constantly open. That is because cyclic GMP is attached to these sodium channels. Okay. So what is happening when it is light? So that is the bleaching of rhodopsin. That is the cycle which is called. So when light falls, what happens first of all is that rhodopsin breaks up into opsin and retinal. And retinal is now in the trans configuration. Then opsin goes and activates transducin. Transducin goes and activates the phosphodiesterase. Phosphodiesterase goes and it dissociates CGMP from the sodium channels, and the sodium channels then close, and the signal transmission stops, and these cells, they stop sending a signal to the brain. Eventually, at the end of this, the retinal, it goes back into a cis configuration and it forms rhodopsin again with opsin. Okay, so I hope this whole cycle is clear to everybody. If there are still any doubts with how actually signals are being sent to the brain or how we actually see images, then you can ask me. But
Oh, no, ma'am, there is no question.
it is
Yeah,
clear.
explain. Nice.
Okay, thank you so much. So, if this is clear, let's move on to the next section. So, now that we know how the image is being processed, how light is being sensed in the rods and the cones. So, similar thing happens in the cones. Like this is the thing that I told you in the rods. A similar thing happens in the cones. So now we'll discuss some of the issues that we have with our eyes, sort of some of the conditions that we develop over the years. So one thing is myopia or nearsightedness. So are you guys aware of what is myopia? Can you tell me what is myopia? I've already given away the answer by saying it's nearsightedness. And so can you tell me what is myopia?
Like those people who does not able to see the things which on their side, like
People which are not able to see what?
far far things which are the
Yes.
object which are kept
So
far
people who
away
are not
from them.
able to see faraway objects, and it is the most common eye condition that I think most of the students develop, because all of us, since we are always studying our books or looking at the laptop, we mostly most of the students, like I'm also wearing a specs, so I'm also myopic. So nearsightedness is when you can see nearby objects clearly, but you're unable to see far off objects. And as you can see in this image, what is happening is, so for a point which is close, the image is correctly formed on the retina. But for a point which is far off, the image is formed somewhere in front of the retina. It is not actually formed on the retina. So for a normal eye, a faraway point will form an image on the retina only. But for a myopic eye, the faraway object will form an image which is in front of the retina and not on the retina. And that is why you'll see a blurry image. So the correction of this is so it is corrected by the by wearing concave lenses like we have in our specs or in our contact lenses. So these lenses, they lead to the so they, you can see here, they lead to the uh, light rays getting refracted, and then the image is again formed on the retina, so we see clearly if we wear a correct powered concave lens in the case of myopia. So moving on to hypermetropia or farsightedness. So as is the case with myopia, you can see near objects clearly. But in hypermetropia, which mostly happens in older age, you can see far objects clearly, but close objects become blurred to you. And why that is happening is, for a normal eye, for a nearby object, the image is formed on the retina. But for a hypermetropic eye, for a nearby object, the image is formed behind the retina. It is not forming in front of the retina this time, but it is forming behind the retina. So, to correct this, we basically use these convex lenses, which actually make the rays refract towards each other, and that is how they make the image form closer and they make it form on the retina. So these are the two conditions of myopia and hypermetropia. And there is a third thing which is called presbyopia, which is not caused, which is actually caused because with age, the ciliary muscles, which actually keep the lens, and they change the accommodation of the lens. So the lens, it becomes more convex when we are looking at closer objects, and it becomes flatter when we are looking at faraway objects, right? And that is controlled by these ciliary muscles which attach the lens to the sclera. So in presbyopia, these ciliary muscles, they get weak and their elasticity gets diminished. So the lens is not able to accommodate to when we are looking close or far away objects, and it mostly happens to people who are older than 40 years of age. And this can also be corrected by wearing contact lenses or specs. Now, having looked at these conditions, let's move on to the types of blindnesses that people can develop because of their because of different parts being damaged in the eye. So, first type is when the cornea would be affected. Second is developing cataract, which also happens mostly with age, where the lens gets affected. Third is retinal blindness, where the retina is getting affected or these rods and cones are getting affected. And the last one is optic nerve itself is damaged. So for the cornea getting affected, what mostly happens is people, they donate their eyes. So in that, eye donation does not really mean that the entire eyeball is getting donated or they take out the entire eye. That's not the case. They
Yeah.
basically just cut out the, like this. They cut out the cornea, and the entire eye stays normal, and you will not be able to detect even that a person has donated their eyes. So removal of cornea, it's also called keratoplasty, and that is what happens in eye donation. And if somebody else has a damaged cornea, basically doctors will replace the cornea into their cornea, and they can even see which layer of cornea is actually damaged, and based on that they can replace the layers of cornea.
So,
And
ma'am, I'm having one question.
yeah,
I'm not able to see the things which are far from me, so I am having the specs on my eye. Okay.
yeah.
This operation will make my eye to see far objects clearly.
What you're talking about is actually LASIK. That is not what I'm discussing here. But yes, in LASIK, basically, they treat your cornea. They actually, mostly what happens is either the cornea gets thicker, or it gets, it gets these wave-like patterns. So it gets, the shape of it changes. And what
Uh,
doctors mostly do in a LASIK operation is that they cut out a thin layer of cornea to make it plain again, so that you can see things clearly. So mostly in LASIK they use laser, and they cut out a very thin layer of cornea, and they make your so that you can look clearly. Okay.
But we didn't want to wear the spectacles after the surgery.
Yeah, you don't have to wear specs after that surgery.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. So what? So why is corneal transplant successful, or why are doctors able to do this surgery? Because whenever we talk about organ transplantation, it's mostly very difficult, and you either have to take the organ from your family members from the same blood group, something or the other is always happening with organ transplant. But corneal transplant is not like that, and it's mostly successful is because, as we discussed, the cornea is avascular. There is no blood supply to the cornea, and therefore there is no immune cells associated with the cornea. So when a cornea is transplanted to a new person, the receiver eye does not reject the cornea. It most often accepts the cornea because there is no immune reaction against the cornea, like is the case with most other organ transplants, where the organ gets rejected by the receiver because of having different immune cells or different blood groups. So you don't have to worry about all these things when it comes to corneal transplantation. So moving on to the next condition or common condition is cataract. So have you guys heard of cataract, or do you know what is cataract?
Motibindu.
Yeah, it's called motiabind in Hindi. So do you know what happens in this? What causes cataract?
Ma'am, the what happens, Nona? It showed in picture that all the what it is, all rays are going to the spot where the image is forming, right? And in the second picture, they had showed us that the rays are not going particularly to that point where our image should be formed.
Yes,
It gets scattered after it passes through the what it is, retina. I think so,
lens.
retina.
Yeah,
Lens.
so basically what happens in cataract is that the lens, it starts getting clouded or it starts getting opaque. So a healthy lens is actually entirely transparent, and it lets the image go through itself, and you can see that it's focusing on one single point as you observed. But if the lens is clouded, then this lights will not be able to cross through the lens, and they'll get scattered because of the lens becoming opaque. So how cataract develops? So what happens is that, as I said, the in the lens there are cells, and all of these cells are filled with these protein called alpha crystalline, right? So this alpha crystalline protein, it has a certain specific folding pattern, which makes it transparent to light, and which also makes it soluble in water. So in cataract, what is happening is this protein alpha crystalline, it is getting misfolded. It's not getting folded in the correct configuration. It's getting misfolded, which makes it insoluble in water, and which also makes it opaque. It does not let light pass through it. And this leads to the blurring of the lens, or the opaqueness of the lens. So it is all because of alpha crystalline, which is getting misfolded. It's not able to fold in the correct pattern in which you would expect it to fold. So the different causes of cataract, there are many causes. Most commonly, it is aging. Other thing is you might have injured your eye. It could have been genetics. It could have been because of increased exposure to radiation. It could be because somebody has a very high myopia, which means like a very high number, not like normal 3, 4, very high number. Or somebody who is a regular smoker might develop or might have more chances of developing cataract because of certain specific medications, because of alcohol consumption, because of obesity, because somebody has hypertension, or because of diabetes. All of these conditions can actually lead to cataract, but the most common cause that we are aware of is actually aging, and the second one is diabetes mostly. And because of diabetes, what happens is the choroid that we talked about, the vascular layer which is supplying blood to the eye, in that the capillaries they start bursting because of the high blood pressure, and that is how the eye gets damaged because of diabetes. That's another reason. But in cataract, so there are two ways in which you can actually treat cataract. So now we know what is causing cataract. It's actually the misfolding of these certain proteins called alpha crystalline. So how do you treat it? You can actually just remove the lens, or you can actually remove these targeted proteins. So in laser surgery, which is actually coming up now frequently, it was not there before, but now recently we have laser surgery, and in laser what they do is they burn the misfolded protein. So can you see in this image that there are these certain white spots? So you can think of these as the misfolded proteins, and in laser the doctor will actually target the laser to these specific misfolded proteins and burn them, and then the healthy cells will actually migrate to this area and repair the things that the doctor burned, and the lens will gain back its transparency. The second technique which is being used since long time is actually lens replacement, and that is what is shown in this image. So basically they make a small incision in the cornea, they break off the lens and they take out the old lens, and in place of that they put up a new lens which is an artificial lens. So they replace the faulty lens with a new artificial lens, and that is what happens in severe cases of what do you call it, cataract. Because in severe cases you cannot burn all of the misfolded protein because there is so much of it. So that is when you will have to use the lens replacement surgery. So these are the two ways in which you can actually treat cataract. So coming to the next two conditions, one thing is retinal blindness. So this is caused by some sort of a damage to the photoreceptors or some damage to the one, so some of the layers of retina, and there are very limited treatment options for this. One of them is either you get a therapy to regenerate photoreceptors, and you prevent the death of further photoreceptors. So these things are still under research and not many of them are functional. One of this is you can completely bypass the eye and you just attach a camera directly to the optic nerve. So that is another way in which retinal blindness can be cured. So you take a camera and you directly attach that to the optic nerve, and that camera will work as the eye. But this is very advanced technology and these treatments are not very common as of now. But eventually I think researchers will be able to figure out an easier way to do it. And
So,
when the
ma'am,
optic nerve itself is damaged,
mm,
which means
so
the yeah.
can we define this invention as a biotech invention,
Yeah, this would
which
be
is
a biotech invention in which you are basically integrating biology with technology.
yeah, because we got a project so that in that they told us the applications of biotechnology in last 5 years. You have to find out what are the applications you had done in the biotechnology field till
Okay.
now in year.
Yeah, so this
Thank
would
you.
also be one of the examples of where technology is being used in biology, is how you are
Okay.
basically connecting the camera directly to the optic nerve. So this can
Yes,
be
ma'am.
one of your examples, correct? The next thing is if the optic nerve itself is damaged. So the eye is working fine, but you're not able to send the signal to the visual cortex because the optic nerve is not functioning. So there is no treatment known of for this uh, as of now. But researchers are trying to find out a solution, and they're trying to find out solution in the sense of getting stem cell therapy. So you use stem cells and you will be so they're trying to use stem cells in order to regenerate neurons and restore the connectivity of the eye to the brain. So these are some types of blindness and how they can be cured. Moving on to today's Q&A session. So which of the following is not a part of the eye? Now it's your guys' turn to answer. So,
Um,
yes, Vinayak, can you repeat that, please?
Ma'am, glomerulus. D.
Yeah. So
Option
the
D.
correct answer is glomerulus because, as we discussed as of now, we have a retina, we have a cornea, we have an iris in the eye. So glomerulus is the one which is not a part of the eye. Moving on, the area from which the optic nerve leaves the retina is called what? What is that point called where the optic nerve leaves the retina?
Could be blind spot.
Yes, it is the blind spot because that is the point where there are no rods and cones present. So you cannot, so that is the spot where no image is formed. What part of the eye is majorly donated?
Cornea.
Correct. So the correct answer to this is cornea. As we discussed, when we talk about eye donation, it's mostly the cornea that is being donated. Cataract is caused by the cloudiness of what?
Lens.
Correct. Other people can also answer if you are actually listening to the class. So, cataract is actually caused by the cloudiness of the lens. A person with a 20 by 50 vision has what? Correct. So it is myopia. So if a person has a 20 by 15 vision, that means that they have myopia. And how it means that is that when they say 20 by 50, it actually means that that person can view objects clearly from 20 feet away when a normal person can actually view those objects clearly from 50 feet away. So it means that that person has a nearsightedness. It can view that object clearly only when he is 20 feet away from the object, while others can actually look at it from 50 feet away. So that is why it is myopia. Next
Okay.
question. Focal length of the lens increases when ciliary muscles do what? Do they contract or do they relax? Or is it fixed? Or does it not depend on the ciliary muscles at all? So how is the focal length of the lens, how does it gets increased? Focal length would basically mean how far the image is being formed from the lens. So if a focal length is shorter, it means the image is forming closer to the lens, and if it's longer, it means that the image is forming further from the lens.
Okay, ma'am.
So what is the answer to this question? Can you guess?
So, contracted or aspirin.
Okay, so you guys are actually incorrect. The correct answer to this question is when the ciliary muscles are relaxed. So what is happening is the eye actually accommodates to looking at faraway objects or closer objects by changing the lens shape when we are viewing distant objects or closer objects, as I said. So if you're viewing a distant object, the lens is in a different shape, but if you're viewing a closer object, the lens is in a different shape. So for a distant object, what happens is the ciliary muscles they mostly relax and the lens becomes flatter. So instead of being like this, it becomes more flat. And this then decreases the curvature of the lens and that leads to a longer focal length. But if the ciliary muscles contract, that will make the lens more convex and that will lead to a shorter focal length. Okay, so the correct answer to this question is relax. Moving on, retina consists of photoreceptor cells, rods, and cones. Rods detect what and cones detect what?
Option A.
That is not correct. Vishwajit, you're correct. It's the D part. The rods detect the intensity of the light and the cones detect the color of the light. In the dark, the photoreceptor is depolarized due to an influx of dash through open ion channels that are gated by dash. So, how is the dark current happening? By the influx of what? And how are these channels gated? We discussed this in the previous slides. Correct answer basically it's A part. It happens majorly by the influx of sodium and calcium ions, and CGMP is the protein that uh, binds to the is the molecule that binds to these channels and keeps them open up. Night blindness is caused by the loss of vitamin A, which leads to a decrease in which of these?
Retinal.
Correct. So you both are correct. It's retinal. What is the primary function of the iris? So, what does the iris do? Does it protect the eye from dust? Does it control the amount of light entering the eye? Does it produce tears? Or is it to focus images on the retina?
Option D.
Correct. So, the correct answer it is actually controls the circumference of the pupil, and therefore it controls the amount of light that is entering into the eye. Cataract occurs due to which of the following? This should be very easy.
Clouding of the lens.
Correct. So, the correct answer is clouding of the lens. What are the main proteins in the lens that help maintain its transparency? So we have discussed this. Correct. So the answer is alpha crystalline. Alpha crystalline is the main protein which actually leads to the transparency of the lens. Thank you guys for joining. This was all for today's session. We discussed about vision and mostly anatomy of the eye and how different conditions and different types of blindnesses happen and how they can be treated. If you have any doubts, you can ask me. Otherwise, thank you for joining. You can leave the meeting.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, I am having one doubt in what are the function of that cell which you have shown us in the starting of the lecture? That what it is? I don't know that. No.
Which
Can you just go to the first slide or second maybe? When I joined, I don't know, but if
tell
you can.
me when you
The
see
diagram is that no, that no. Ah, this.
these
Ah,
cells, rods and cones.
hmm. Ah. So
So these
in this, there are particular functions of each part. Is there any function for each part?
so
Like rod
basically
has different function, cone has different function, the nucleus of that has different function, like that, or
no, so basically the nucleus and all everything has the same function. They're like normal cell nucleus and mitochondria and all these things others are similar. Difference is that rods are the cells which are actually sensitive to light, but they're not sensitive to different colors. So if somebody has only rods which are functioning and their cones are not functioning, then they'll only be able to see a black and white image. So if our eye
mm,
only has rods, you'll be able to see black
then
and white things.
color will be blurred.
There'll be no color
Color.
only because rods are not sensitive to colors. They're only sensitive to light,
Uh,
not in the color of the light. Cones are the ones that are sensitive to these specific wavelengths. So, you know, right? The invisible light, there are these different wavelengths which correspond to different colors, and all of them come together and form white light. Hana.
yes.
So that white light is actually what is being seen by the rods, but in cones, those specific colors are being seen or they are being picked
Mm,
up. So the cones can actually see red, green, blue, these different colors, and these different combinations form all of these colors that we actually see in our life. So
yes,
that is the
ma'am.
major functional difference between rods and cones. Otherwise, they're only difference in their shape, but as such, the function of nucleus or mitochondria is not different in the two cells. One another major difference is that in rods, these discs have the pigment which is called rhodopsin, and in cones, this area has the pigment which is called ionopsin. So that is
Mm,
another major difference between these two.
uh, so in exam they can ask us like that. What are the major difference between rod and cone cells? Like that they
Yes,
can
they
ask.
can ask you what is the major difference between rods and cones. Correct.
Mm, that is rhodopsin, and the
Ionopsin.
one is
First of all, the
pigmented,
major
right?
difference is that
Ionopsin.
with rods only see the intensity of light, so they can only form a black and white image. Cones are actually sensitive to the color of light and they can form colored images. And then the
Yes.
difference is in the shape, and then the difference is in the rhodopsin and ionopsin.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Anybody else has any doubts? If not, let's end today's session. Thank you for joining. Okay.
Okay.